When you walk into a really monumental, centuries-old building, you rarely actually think about the blueprints.
Oh, definitely not. You just kind of take it in.
Right. You just experience the space. You feel the grandeur, the intention of the room. But someone actually had to decide exactly where the pillars go, which way the windows face, and how the floor plan, guides your footsteps.
Yeah, and every physical structure is really just a physical manifestation of a core belief.
Exactly.
It's a crucial way to look at it. I mean, form always follows a philosophy. The architecture isn't an accident. It's a theology carved into stone. It's woven right into the physical movements of the people inside.
And today, we are doing a deep dive into the ultimate architectural blueprint of worship. We want to figure out exactly why the Catholic liturgy is built the way it is.
Right, the actual mechanics of it.
Yeah. We're going to unpack 5 profound quotes about the liturgy to discover the what and the why behind this ancient form of worship. And just to set the stage for you, these 5 quotes come from books and interviews featuring Catholics who represent a very balanced perspective.
Which is so refreshing, honestly.
It really is. We are looking at voices that deliberately avoid modernism, but they are also avoiding radical or unhealthy forms of traditionalism.
And that's incredibly helpful because liturgical discussions can get bogged down in polarizing rhetoric very quickly, like instantly.
Oh, absolutely.
But when you look at sources that occupy a grounded, balanced space, you can actually look at the mechanics of the liturgy and ask those deeper questions about human nature and divine worship without all the noise.
Definitely. And a quick note for you before we start looking at the blueprints. If you want to read the text we're discussing today, you can find most of these quotes collected over at epistles.online.
Yeah, it's a great resource. It's a fantastic website that promotes this exact kind of balanced approach to Catholicism, deliberately avoiding those extremes to just offer clear, grounded thinking. So, okay, let's unpack this. We really have to start with the most fundamental question imaginable.
Right, the baseline.
Yeah. Before we even talk about the physical movements, or standing versus kneeling, we have to look at the foundational mindset. Like, who is the liturgy actually for?
Oh, that brings us directly to Joseph Cardinal Ratzinger, who, of course, later became Pope Benedict XVI.
Right.
So in his 2005 foreword to Dom Alquinread's book, The Organic Development of the Liturgy, Ratzinger diagnoses a subtle but really massive shift in modern worship.
What kind of shift?
He warns that if the liturgy starts to look like and this is his phrase, a workshop for our activity, then we're completely forgetting the single most essential thing.
Who is God?
Exactly. The essential thing is God.
A workshop for our activity. That's an interesting phrase. It almost implies treating the liturgy like a community project. Yeah, or a space where we are just sort of celebrating our own togetherness.
Right.
Precisely. I mean, Ratzinger writes that the liturgy is not about us. It is about God. And he goes so far as to say that forgetting about God is the most imminent danger of our age.
Wow, the most imminent danger.
Yeah, he is sharply critiquing this habit of making human activity the focal point of worship.
Okay, wait, I have to challenge Ratzinger on this, or at least, play devil's advocate for a second.
Sure, go for it.
Isn't a massive part of church supposed to be about community? Like, if everyone is just focused purely upward, completely ignoring the people in the pews right next to them, don't we lose the entire social fabric of worship? Doesn't it become kind of isolating?
That's a really great question, and it's the exact tension Ratzinger is addressing. What's fascinating here is that he isn't saying community doesn't matter.
Okay.
He's saying that if community becomes the primary objective, the entire structure collapses into itself.
Oh.
Well, think about human ego. When the focus shifts to, say, how well the choir performed, or how relatable and funny the priest's anecdotes were.
Right, the entertainment value.
Exactly. Or even just how perfectly included everyone felt in the activity of the service, the axis of the liturgy tilts. It goes from being vertical, which is humanity reaching toward the divine, to being horizontal, which is really just humanity looking at humanity.
Oh, I see. It's like, okay, imagine buying a ticket to a grand theater performance. You dress up, you sit in this beautiful auditorium, but when the curtain goes up, the actors aren't actually performing a play.
Right.
The actors are just staring at the audience, and the audience is staring right back at the actors.
That is a perfect way to picture it.
Yeah, everyone is just looking at each other, totally ignoring the actual art that was supposed to happen.
Yeah.
It defeats the entire purpose of being in the theater to begin with.
Yeah, and if God isn't the absolute focal point, it stops being worship and starts being a social club.
which is a huge distinction.
Yeah, exactly. Ratzinger insists that in any liturgical reform, the primacy of God must remain the absolute first priority. Because if you lose the vertical axis, the horizontal axis actually loses its meaning anyway. You just end up celebrating yourselves.
That vertical versus horizontal distinction is actually the perfect transition, because building directly on Ratzinger's point about focusing internally on God, we have to look at how that internal focus translates to physical direction.
Right, the actual spatial orientation of the room.
Exactly. How does a congregation physically demonstrate that their focus is vertical rather than just, looking at each other?
So this brings us to the concept of ad orientem, which literally translates to the east.
Right.
Historically, this refers to the priest and the congregation all facing the exact same direction during the most sacred parts of the Mass.
And to explore the mechanics of this, we have a really great quote from Kyle Clement, which is featured in Jesse Romero's 2024 book, What Attracts Men to the Sacred Liturgy and Why.
Yeah, Clement's perspective on this is super insightful.
It is. He describes the traditional Latin Mass as being fundamentally ordered. He defines beauty as that which is true and good, and he argues that the key element of this beauty is being truly ad orientem.
Which ties right back to that vertical focus.
Exactly. He describes it as the creature focused on the creator, rather than creature focused on creature.
Which perfectly mirrors Ratzinger's warning. But this is also where a massive modern misunderstanding crops up.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, when people hear about the priest facing the altar, the immediate reaction is often defensive. People ask, why is the priest turning his back to the people? That feels rude or exclusionary, or like he is just ignoring the community.
Which is a very horizontal way of thinking.
It totally is. But Dutch Cardinal Eijk completely reframes this misconception. He clarifies the actual physical reality of what is happening.
What does he say?
Eijk says, quote, "I do not celebrate Mass with my back to the people. I say it by turning my face towards Christ. Together with the people, we are truly turned towards Christ."
Wow, okay. Here's where it gets really interesting. That reframing changes everything.
Doesn't it?
Because if you view the priest as an entertainer or a motivational speaker, then yes, turning around is turning his back on his audience. But let's use the analogy of a pilot in an airplane.
Oh, I love this analogy.
Right. You wouldn't want the pilot facing the passengers, sitting in a circle in the cabin, having a casual chat while the plane is supposed to be flying.
Definitely not. That would be terrifying.
Yeah. You want the pilot at the front of the aircraft, facing forward, looking at the horizon, leading everyone to the exact same destination.
That hits the nail on the head. The priest is the spiritual captain leading the congregation. When the pilot faces the windshield, you don't feel insulted that he isn't making eye contact with you.
No, you feel secure because he's focused on the shared goal.
Right. When the priest and the people face the same direction, it entirely removes that creature-focused-on-creature dynamic that Clement warned about. It actively prevents that theater scenario you mentioned earlier where everyone is just staring at each other.
It unifies the room by pointing everyone outside of the room.
Exactly.
And real quick, before we move on to our next blueprint concept, while we were discussing Jesse Romero's 2024 book, I want to briefly mention that Epistles goes out of its way to support virtuous, tradition-leaning Catholic authors like the ones we are discussing right now.
Which is so important for keeping these ideas accessible.
It is. The books these quotes come from are deeply fascinating, and if you want to explore these concepts in more detail, book links connected to the quotes we are discussing today are actually available right now on epistles.online.
So easy to find.
Yeah, we highly encourage you, if you want to purchase these books or just learn more about the authors, to use the links provided on their website. It is a great way to support their mission of promoting balanced Catholic thought.
It really is. The source material offers so much rich context that we can honestly only begin to touch on here.
True. So, okay, we have established the overall macro direction of the room, the priest and the congregation facing the same way. But let's zoom in a bit.
Okay, zooming in.
What about the physical posture of the individual? Specifically, the posture used during the absolute, most intimate moment of the liturgy receiving the Eucharist.
Now we are moving from the spatial orientation of the room to the deeply personal physical mechanics of communion.
Right.
For this, we look at the reflections of Korean priest Father Daniel Seo. He writes about the profound, life-altering impact he experienced when he discovered the tradition of receiving communion kneeling and directly on the tongue.
Yeah, he literally says, it's almost like the scales fell off my eyes.
Such a powerful description.
He calls receiving directly on the tongue an act of humility, and views receiving while kneeling as the highest expression of reverence and love to our Lord. But so what does this all mean?
Well,
I can hear someone asking, why does a simple shift in physical mechanics trigger such a massive spiritual realization? How does kneeling versus standing or receiving on the tongue versus in the hand make scales fall off your eyes?
if we connect this to the bigger picture, to understand why this shift is so powerful, we have to look at the visceral analogy Father Seo uses.
Okay.
He brings up the image of the mother pelican, which is a very ancient traditional symbol in the church.
Oh, right.
According to legend, in times of severe famine, a mother pelican will use her beak to pierce her own breast. She will pick at her own flesh to feed her starving babies directly on the tongue with her own blood and body.
I mean, that is incredibly intense.
It is intense, but it is the perfect biological model for what the Eucharist claims to be, Christ giving his own flesh to his children so they don't spiritually starve.
Wow.
And here is where the posture comes in. When you are a baby bird in the nest, you don't reach out and grab the food with your wings.
Right.
You open your mouth, completely dependent, completely vulnerable, and receive what is given to you by the one sacrificing for you.
I can see the profound beauty in that, but I can also see modern people completely bristling at it.
Oh, absolutely. It feels very passive to a modern sensibility.
Yeah, because in almost every other area of our lives, we are taught to be active participants. We are told to be autonomous, to take charge, to reach out and grab what is ours. So why is complete dependence suddenly the ideal here?
Because it isn't passivity, it is receptivity. And receptivity requires immense active humility.
Oh, that's a great distinction. Receptivity versus passivity.
Right. Modern culture idolizes autonomy. We want to be in control. Taking communion in the hand while standing up feels very normal to a modern person because it's how we receive a diploma or a paycheck or, a cup of coffee.
It's an exchange between equals.
Exactly. It's transactional.
Yeah.
But kneeling down and opening your mouth is profoundly countercultural. It forces you to physically admit that you are an infant in relation to God. You are entirely dependent.
That perfectly explains why he calls it the ultimate act of humility. The physical posture actively bypasses your intellectual ego.
It really does.
When your body enacts total dependency, your mind and spirit are forced to follow suit. I mean, you can't harbor a massive ego while kneeling with your mouth open like a baby bird.
Exactly. The physical posture informs the soul, which naturally leads us to a difficult but very necessary question.
What's that?
Well, if the profound reverence of these traditions, facing God together, kneeling in humility, maintaining this vertical focus, if this is so spiritually impactful, why has there been such a massive shift away from these forms over the past half century?
Right. Why did we change the blueprints?
Oh, exactly.
And that is the tension at the center of our final source, Peter Kwasniewski, from his 2020 book, The Holy Bread of Eternal Life.
Yeah, this is a fascinating perspective.
Kwasniewski makes a very provocative argument about discipline and form regarding the Novus Ordo Mass versus the traditional Latin Mass. Now, I want to pause here and be very clear with you listening.
Quite an important caveat.
Kwasniewski's argument here is definitely sharp, and while our goal today isn't to take a side, validate, or condemn his specific stance on the Novus Ordo, we do want to impartially report on what he's arguing. We aren't endorsing his viewpoints, but we want to understand why he believes what he believes to give you the full picture.
Which is key for a balanced deep dive.
Exactly. So he asserts that the traditional Latin Mass fulfills St. Paul's requirements for worship, while the newer form often exhibits the laxity and blurred boundaries that Paul actively criticized in the early church.
This raises an important question, right? The concept of blurred boundaries is really the crux of his argument.
How so?
Well, St. Paul was very clear that worship should not be casual, chaotic, or lack definition. Kwasniewski is pointing out that historically, the physical space of the sanctuary and the roles within the liturgy were highly defined.
Right, there were clear lanes.
Exactly. The priest acted in persona Christi, performing specific duties that only the ordained priest could perform. The laity had their own distinct essential role, but in many modern liturgical settings, those boundaries are deliberately blurred.
Meaning what, practically?
You have laity constantly entering the sanctuary, taking over roles that used to be reserved for the priest, and just a general casualness that erodes the distinction between the sacred and the mundane.
But let me push back on Kwasniewski's premise for a second. Doesn't tightening the rules just lead to cold legalism?
To common fear, yeah.
Like if we obsess over exactly who stands where, who holds what, and what language is used, aren't we just missing the forest for the trees? Doesn't too much structure kill the spirit of the law?
I get that. But Kwasniewski actually cites the writer Martin Mosbach to explain why that fear is misplaced.
What does Mosbach say?
Mosbach argues that genuine reform always means a return to form. Think of it like a chalice holding water.
Okay.
If the chalice loses its structural integrity and melts, the water spills everywhere and is lost.
Right. It can't function.
Reforming the chalice doesn't mean melting it further to be, more inclusive of the table. It means chiseling back the sharp defined edges so it can actually hold the water again.
Oh.
Form preserves the essence. When you blur the boundaries of the liturgy, Kwasniewski argues, you are basically melting the chalice.
A return to form, meaning more discipline and more definition, not less. But he also makes a really fascinating historical point about why this lack of discipline is uniquely problematic today. He acknowledges that human error is nothing new, right?
Oh, sure. There were periods of massive liturgical abuse, irreverence, and sketchy behavior in the Dark Ages and the Middle Ages.
Right. But he points out a crucial difference in the mechanics of church governance today compared to back then.
Yes, the communication aspect.
Exactly. In the Middle Ages, a bishop might not know that a priest 3 villages over was completely mangling the liturgy. The hierarchy just lacked the means of instant communication.
But today, we have the technology to identify egregious problems instantly.
Right. A video of a liturgical abuse, whether it's profound irreverence, profanation, or even idolatrous practices, can literally circle the globe in an hour.
So Kwasniewski is arguing that because the modern hierarchy has the tools to see and address these issues instantly, their indifference to these abuses makes the failure qualitatively different today than it was in the past.
Ignorance is no longer an excuse.
No, not at all. If you have the tools to enforce the blueprint of worship, failing to use them is a conscious choice to just let the building crumble.
It's a really heavy critique. He's basically demanding a return to structure to ensure that the physical reality of the liturgy matches the immense sacred reality it claims to represent.
Absolutely.
It is striking how deeply the necessity for defined structure permeates literally everything we've unpacked today.
It's the common thread through all the quotes.
It really is. The physical orientation, the specific postures, the discipline of the boundaries, it all exists to prevent chaos and keep human focus exactly where it belongs.
Because we crave order. Chaos is just exhausting.
It is. And frankly, that is true whether you are dealing with a blurred boundary in a spiritual sanctuary or trying to untangle a totally chaotic schedule in your day-to-day work life.
Oh, that's a universal human truth. When the structure breaks down, whether it's a liturgy or an office, the people inside the system suffer the consequences.
Exactly. Yeah. Which is actually why I want to take a quick moment to tell you about a tool that brings structure back to your workplace, which is staff-scheduling.com.
A lifesaver for managers.
Truly. If you manage a team, you know that one of the most stressful, universally dreaded tasks is creating employee schedules.
It's the worst. It eats up so many hours.
It eats up hours of your week, and when it is done poorly, when the boundaries and hours get blurred, it seriously harms team engagement and morale. But there is a brilliantly simple solution.
Tell them about the template.
It is a Microsoft Excel-based automated staff scheduling template from staff-scheduling.com.
Yeah.
Through carefully designed formulas and formatting, it does all the heavy lifting for you.
You literally just enter the names and shifts, right?
Yep. You simply enter your employee names and their shifts, and the template automatically calculates and displays 3 crucial metrics.
Nice.
It shows the number of staff working at any given time of day, it shows the total hours assigned to each employee, and it shows the total days they are already scheduled.
So it takes all the guesswork out of it.
It takes the chaos entirely out of the process, making scheduling incredibly fast, easy, and error-free. You can reclaim your time and bring much-needed order to your workplace by visiting staff-scheduling.com.
Because structure makes everything function the way it was actually designed to.
It really does. And looking back at the structure of our exploration today, we have covered some profound ground regarding the ultimate blueprint.
We truly have. It's been a journey.
Let's do a quick recap.
Sure. We started with Cardinal Ratzinger's foundational warning about human ego, the urgent need to keep God as the absolute primary focus, avoiding the trap of a self-centered horizontal workshop liturgy.
Well, wait.
From there, we looked at how that vertical focus becomes physical with Kyle Clements and Cardinal Eijk. We unpack the mechanics of ad orientem, understanding that it isn't about a priest turning his back on his community, but rather the pilot and the passengers turning their faces toward Christ together.
Heading toward the exact same destination.
Precisely. Then we zoomed in to the deeply personal physical mechanics with Father Sio's powerful mother pelican analogy.
Which was so striking.
It really illustrates how receiving the Eucharist kneeling and on the tongue acts as the ultimate countercultural posture of humility and dependence. And finally, we explored Peter Kwasniewski's urgent call for a disciplined return to form, arguing that modern indifference to blared liturgical boundaries is a unique failure that requires the chiseling back of defined edges.
It all comes back to that architectural blueprint. Every physical motion, every rule, every direction we face, it is all deliberately designed to build a specific spiritual reality inside of us.
Form follows philosophy.
Always. If you have enjoyed this exploration and you want to continue uncovering these kinds of balanced insights, I highly encourage you to visit epistles.online. Guarding the deposit of faith.
It's just a wealth of information.
It is. Explore their site, read the articles, and subscribe for more content that consistently presents this kind of grounded, thoughtful perspective on Catholicism.
It's an incredible resource for anyone who wants to keep digging into how the way we act shapes the way we believe. Which actually, that brings me to a final thought I want to leave you with today.
Oh, what's that?
Well, we have spent this entire deep dive looking at how our physical postures, kneeling, standing, facing a certain direction in a sanctuary, can profoundly shape our internal spiritual reality and our capacity for reverence.
Right.
But it forces you to look outside the walls of the church as well.
How do you mean?
Well, if intentional physical habits in worship can build a deep sense of the divine, we have to ask ourselves, how might the mundane, everyday physical habits we've adopted in our modern, technology-driven lives be secretly restructuring our deeply held beliefs without us even realizing it?
Oh, that's heavy.
Think about it. When we spend hours a day hunched over a glowing screen, swiping through endless digital feeds, completely isolated in our own customized bubbles, what kind of liturgy are we participating in right there?
Wow.
And more importantly, what is that physical, isolated posture quietly teaching our souls to worship?
That is, talk about an invisible blueprint dictating our lives.
Exactly.
We will leave you to think on that. Until next time.